They telling me that I need to go out and vote. Why? Ha. Ain't nobody. No, let me stop.
That was it. That was
Southern
that
playalistic, man.
Oh, that was the intro.
That's some Southern playalistic, man. They telling me that I need to get out.
Ain't
and
nobody
vote.
black running but crackers, so
Well, I got to register. I'm thinking of better to do with my time. Yeah,
It
Southern
ain't nothing
playalistic.
but a D thing, Democrat thing, baby. hey, you know.
Hey, this is vote or die
Yeah,
edition.
Hey, look, I already say when black folks say go vote, it's a silent word. This is what they say. Go vote. Parentheses, Democrat. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a silent Democrat in that go vote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
When people talk about voting, they just say, okay, go to the ballot, just go vote. And our mission is to dig, just dig, just find it. Where that come from? Where black people come from with voting and why we vote the way we vote. And you know how people say doing a deep dive? Because sometimes you do the deep dive on history, you got to study American history, study black history. Black history, it's American history. It's damn near one and the same because once we were here, it became black history.
yeah. And again, with the hashtag and slogans thing, we were talking about last week, man. Like we can't just repeat stuff without doing. We have resources to do our own homework. So don't just go say go vote. People died for you to vote. Go back, realize that hey, during Reconstruction, during between 1865 and 1870, there was over 2,000 black elected officials. There was a time when we were the majority in some southern states. There was like know why we're voting and know what voting doesn't know, and know who we are, which I feel like the black vote has always been really just a needed piece to win an election. And I feel like I don't think when you look back through history and even through our history with voting, legislative bills, I really can't name a bill that has been, or a privilege that has been granted to black people that was done out of moral goodness. Like pretty much everything that was been done for us has been done for political gain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not to I don't want to discredit. There have been white people who marched with us who did that. I'm not saying that those people didn't do things for more reasons, but from a political standpoint, almost everything that's ever been done for black people has not been out of a moral, they deserve this. It's been out of political gain.
Yeah, and when you start looking at dates, you start talking about history, and we say 1776 was the American Revolution. That's when we became Americans or whatever.
Yeah.
And the whole George Washington and those guys fighting against the British guys, and now here we are, 1776.
We was there fighting too.
Fighting
so
too. And then at a certain point, the only people that could vote were white men that own land. Yeah, you had to be a white man, you had to own some land to vote. And then we started talking about all of the different parties, because it was not always just Democratic and Republican. It evolved to that. You had the Whig Party before they were the Republican Party.
That's what they were called, the Whigs?
Yeah, the Whigs.
Because what it was for like George Washington for the wigs that they used to wear, or was it just like
that may have been,
wiggers? Like, was it like
it was WHIG.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't last too long.
Okay.
And then, you had Dixiecrats, or what they call them, Dixiecrats. But it evolved to the Republicans and the Democratic Party. And then that Civil War happening from 1861 to 1865, and we know Abraham Lincoln being assassinated in 1865, and then what they call the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which over 200,000 of us fought on the side of the Union.
Yeah.
People they'll say, hey, Abraham Lincoln, he gets the credit for I
was busting my gun, but he's the one who freed us.
It's business at the end of the day. It's business. And then we get the 13th Amendment, and then that frees us, right? Yeah. So, as Raz Cass would say, we just 13th Amendments.
Okay. Hey, I like that.
We just 13th Amendments, and then the 14th Amendments gave us citizenship, which was crazy is that you get this stuff in the 1800s, and then you got to fight back for it again.
Yeah, that's what I think Henry Gates has said. That was because I always wonder like how do we have the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments in 1865? Like I always wonder what was the need for a Voting Rights Act? And Henry Gates made a great point. He said there were rights that we had in the 1870s that we were marching for it to regain in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, I think a lot of people don't necessarily know that or truly understand that. And with the voting rights, when I was studying and looking into some of the reasons why it was needed, and it was like with the voting tax, having to pass some literacy tests. Poll taxes.
Yeah, literacy test. I mean, the 15th Amendment granted black men the right to vote.
Yeah.
So, 13th Amendment, hey, you're free. 14th Amendment, you're free, but now we'll make you a citizen. 15th Amendment, black man, you can go vote. Which was critical because in the 1800s, we were populating land in the South.
Yeah.
And then the Reconstruction started, say 1865, or we could start at 1867. Let's say 10 to 12 years to 1877.
Yeah.
And that's when we were taking office.
Yeah.
You had black men that were, free slaves that were in the Senate, House of Representatives. I mean, we didn't dominate it, but people called it a progressive time for black people.
Most
the Reconstruction. So we were there, and you had, certain states like Louisiana and South Carolina, even Mississippi, Florida, where population-wise, hey, we were able to go out. Black men were able to go out and vote.
Yeah, and then even to go from that to 2,000 elected officials to by 1901, the last elected official basically walking out and turning the lights off for a whole generation. It's crazy. And it's one of those things where, again, when we go back to history, a lot of times, and even the nature of this show, it really, has been the empowerment that we felt from the information of history and from the knowledge of what we've been connected to. I think there's also an awareness and, a watchfulness that also should come from being connected to our history. And a lot of times, learning about different things politically and party-wise. And it's not just the fact that we were once, as a nation, black nation, Republicans, and we switched to that.
Yeah, we'll get into that too.
Yeah, but it's it's a lot of the reasons why we were different things and the way that we've been sold out. Like you were explaining, and I went and researched myself, but the compromise of
the 1877. That's why I brought up the 1876, the Battle of the Revolutionary War or whatever. Because then in 1876, and ain't all these dates. 1876 was the election year. And that's when you had Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel Tilden. Now, Hayes was a Republican. Okay. Tilden was a Democrat, ironically a Democrat from New York, an up north Democrat. So what made that election critical was that you had a guy that in 1876 won the popular vote by over 200,000 votes. But didn't win the electoral vote. And the irony in that is that you had a guy, Rutherford B. Hayes, as a Republican. At that time, he had 165 electoral votes.
He was one electoral vote short.
Tilden was one electoral vote short. He had 184.
Okay.
The three critical states that caused that compromise was Louisiana, South Carolina, and Florida.
Okay.
Because it was just the irony is just, with the George Bush one, I think, and Al Gore, they were waiting.
2000 election.
Yeah. So, make a long story short, so you say, okay, those three had 20 electoral votes between them. So if this one guy gets out 20, he wins by 1 point. He wins the electoral, the electoral college or whatever they called it back then, the electoral vote.
Yeah.
And so the irony is because you had this divide of blacks and whites and blacks being able to vote, when everything came in, it was undecided for each of those three states.
Yeah. And then get to what happened, how it was settled.
So then in 1877, they go to D.C., meet at the hotel, the Wormley Hotel, which from my studies was owned by a black man.
Yeah.
So they meet and they're sitting down, the Democrats and the Republican. So in a nutshell, the Democrats were like, hey, we'll give y'all the presidency. We'll give the Republicans the presidency. But y'all got to give us the South.
Y'all got to remove
the federal troops.
Backtrack to the Civil War.
Yeah.
After the Civil War, the Union still had troops stationed in the South.
Yeah, to protect you. To
protecting us. So these troops that were stationed in the South basically governed over the safety of us, of Black Americans, because the fact that blacks were in the majority. So not only are they in the majority, they're in the majority, and then there's Union officers there, which means that you really can't engage in some of the Jim Crow stuff, some of the hate crimes, lynching, all this, because you don't have police, you have forces there.
Yeah, you got federal troops.
Go back to the Wesley Hotel.
Yeah, and then they met, and that compromise was that we'll give the Republicans the election. You guys will take, because we couldn't decide those electoral votes because it was split in Louisiana and South Carolina and Florida. So we'll give y'all the presidency. Y'all give us the South back. Reconstruction at that point was dead.
So we got sold out.
That 1877.
We got sold out by the Democrats.
It was a compromise. Okay, the Republicans took the presidency, but in return, the Democrats got control of the South, told the troops to leave, and now we got Jim Crow. Now, black folks in the South, we returning back to Jim Crow. And then that lasted damn near until Lyndon B. Johnson in the Civil Rights Act. And was it 1865? Which the irony in that was that to me was what kind of ushered in the black folks riding with Democrats. Martin Luther King and in the 50s, and then going into that civil rights movement and having Goldwater as a Republican running against Lyndon B. Johnson. And Lyndon got it because JFK got assassinated.
Yeah, my own family, I'm Robert Mayberry IV. One of the things my grandfather, Jr., and his father, Robert Mayberry, used to debate about was the first Robert Mayberry was a Republican. My grandfather was a Democrat. And it was right around that time of the shift of what party was the majority black party. Yeah. And they used to have a lot of, this is something that my family just kind of family story show. They had a lot of debates, back and forth politically about that. I think, at the end of the day, when it comes to voting, when it comes to us in the political space, I really feel like neither side is our friend. At the end of the day, Democrats, if we go back to Lyndon B. Johnson and we go back to the Voting Rights Act, a lot of Southern Democrats left the party because of civil rights, because of the things that were being done for civil rights. Like, even if you want to go back to the Voting Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act was signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, but it was
strategic.
Yeah, this was strategic. This was something that when it was presented to him, he basically told Martin and them, like, hey, I can't do this right now. Like, I believe in the act. Look, politically, I can't really sign this right now. It took us getting beat down by police officers, having kids out there, doing all. We had to get beat down on national television for there to be enough political currency for someone to say we need to do this voting right, and then sauce it up with for the sake of our democracy and all. How politicians go in politics. But like at the end of the day, that goes back to my original point of everything being about political currency. And if we bring that all the way to literally today, and there being an issue with Ice Cube, who presented his contract with Black America, and the attack that was placed on Ice Cube. See, a lot of people, they're not looking at this through a historical lens. They're looking at this through it's Ice Cube. What's he know about this? And they don't understand the political currency element of it. They don't understand the you haven't been selected. You're not on message with what we believe element of it. So like they don't understand the fact that like no side. God, I'll say this, man. I made a post about this. Most of my comments, almost every single one of my comments were African Americans speaking about it, right? Good, bad, and different. There's one person who wasn't African American. He's a friend of mine. He's Jewish. Now he comes in the comments and says, wouldn't expect less from him working with Trump. He also is friends with Farrakhan, who's anti-Semitic. Just out the gate, right? So I said,
he couldn't wait to get that bar off.
Yeah, he wanted to say this. Then he said, my enemy's enemy is my friend. So I responded to his comment. I said, the thing about being a black man is that they're both our enemies. So we have to make a decision: which enemy can we be more efficient with? You know what I'm saying? Like, there really is no loyalty to there really is no there is no political party that has a higher moral ground to stand on.
Yeah.
No way that the Democrats can say that, oh, Republicans are this, because we can always go back to this and vice versa.
Yeah, it's some irony around that, because even if I go back to, we were talking about the parties and we were talking about the Whig Party and how they became the Republicans, and then back during the Confederate time, you had the Dixiecrats. Lyndon B. Johnson, the guy that passed that civil rights bill, he started in Texas. Texas was, I mean, during the Confederacy. So okay. I have to do the math to say, okay, a guy that was a Democrat coming out of Texas, he probably was affiliated with the Dixiecrats. Yeah. Which was, of course, the secession and then, the war on the American land and the Civil War and all that. But then the irony of, if you look at a guy like Ice Cube and you say with the Democrats, a lot of times we associate the Democrats right now with pandering to black people. More so pandering to black women. Yeah. I don't know if they try to pander to black men, but they do it in a real just rapping and basketball, the most stereotypical way. And then you have an entertainer, which we think, hey, for the Democrats, y'all love black entertainers. An entertainer and Ice Cube coming and trying to communicate, and you say, no, we'll catch you after the election. And then the Republicans come and say, oh, well, we'll take it. I know people say, hey, he's an entertainer, and I have my qualms with entertainers being involved in politics. I would rather them use that, create the platform and let someone else come in. Like you have the platform, and then you can step aside and say, come into the mic, and then you move out the way, and then someone that's just informed and that they've been doing that, they can come in and step in. But either way, you got a guy that's an entertainer that actually had a plan. Because most of the time when they talk to entertainers, it's not really a plan or any strategy involved.
This wasn't a Twitter rant. This wasn't after a basketball game.
Yeah, whether you agree or not. Yeah, whether you agree or not, it was some sort of plan. Whether you agree with it, whether you say it was actually a plan or a strategy. And 9 times out of 10, when they're using entertainers, it's really just to entertain or to pander to black people to get black people to vote on either side. On either side.
And the thing about it that's kind of that strikes me is, you see, I feel like what happened with Ice Cube today was like a combination of like 7 different things we talked about. It was the miseducation of the Negro. It was Malcolm and his view on white liberals. It was feminism and basically the knocking of the black man off of the totem pole. This was all of these things in one interview, because you have a man who basically presented a position and said, I'm willing to work with whoever engages with my position. Both parties reached out. So if you look back historically, Booker T met with the president. Booker T, this is during the time coming out of slavery. So there's no time in black history where we've had black people that had initiatives that they wanted to get done, where meeting with the president was something that was off the table.
Yeah, and Ice Cube never met with the president, just for clarity's sake.
Yeah. Oh, Ice Cube. Yeah. To your point, he never met with the president, nor did he meet with the woman who sent the tweet out. Yeah. They asked him his input on certain things, and he spoke his input. So we have this new thing, which is this is a liberal concept, that simply being next to the president is fundamentally wrong. So it's not fundamentally wrong to be next to Joe Biden. And I'm not talking about in agreement. I'm not talking about in collaboration. Simply being next to, if you collaborate with him on a bill about a black initiative you looked at as a sellout, that's never happened in black history. And the crazy thing about it is, Roland Martin met with the president met with the White House in 2018. And you know what Roland Martin said his reason for meeting was?
He's a journalist.
I'm a journalist. Anyway, let me stay on topic. But so you have that issue, right? Yeah. Then how does his interview handle? Roland Martin, in the middle of a conversation with a black person who's put together a contract with Black America, and you're having this discussion, you're using your liberal tactics of discrediting somebody and then what do? You interject someone who has nothing to do with it. You interject a woman, and then that woman explains to him what activism is. So the assumption is, okay, so Ice Cube doesn't know anything about activism, but you, woman, because you're a part of BLM, you know about activism. So point being that you brought her in at a higher moral level than him, knowing nothing about his background. So you have that issue going on. Then you go and tell him his idea. Why didn't you should take your idea and you should be a part of what she's doing. And know what she tells him? If I had your platform, I would have got much further. So you're muting the black man. You're muting him because he's saying something that's outside of your agenda. Like, this is like history
the whole pick a side. Yeah, that whole pick a side thing. And one thing I want to get back to when we talked about the Lyndon B. Johnson, and we gotta talk about Malcolm X's famous speech, the Ballad or the Bullet.
I was listening to that today.
Which to me, the stuff that he was saying in that speech in 1964 resonates even now in 2020.
Yeah.
You got to think about it. At that time, he's like, this is the most critical moment. And in 2020, we're saying that now. This is the most critical moment. This is a critical time. And, people can recognize the divides of the whole pick a side. If you talk about Ice Cube, black people are going to pick a side. Black people are, I agree, I disagree. People are going to pick a side. And as long as you have that pick a side approach, it gets away from what Malcolm talked about early on in the Ballad of the Bullet when he named Reverend Cleaves and said, hey, this guy's a Christian minister, or Martin Luther King, and what he's fighting for, and nonviolent approach. But we have to put those differences aside.
I'm a Muslim minister, but I'm leaving my religion at home.
Yeah.
Like, that was powerful, man, because the conviction of faith is something that we're taught, regardless of your religious belief. Most people, they feel like their faith is with them everywhere they go. So for a minister to say, I'm of this ilk, but I'm leaving that at home, and the reason I'm leaving that at home is because if I bring religion, and you bring religion, then now we got a source of contention.
Yeah, we're picking a side. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I joked today, like, I started to, hey, thank God for Herm Edwards, who had the great advice, that when you write something, don't press send, because I had a don't press send moment, because I really wrote, I was like, we should just separate. We should just like, what? If we hate each other that much and we love just our segment that much, let's just be two different races. Y'all, one side be the colors, one side be the Negroes, and on this side, hey, if you want to be a blue loving BLM LGBT holder flag waving person, y'all what y'all want to be called? Y'all could be the Ravens, the Colors, whatever.
Pick your team. Huh?
Yeah, and then and then on the Black Power side over here, where we still believe in the nuclear family, and we still believe in the one woman, one man. All that we could be our side. That way we could be unified, and then y'all can be unified, because it looks like it's getting to a point now where it's like, do we really hate each other? That's the real question I'm starting to ask myself.
Yeah, before anything, man, before you're Democratic, before you're Republican, you're black. And I'll tell people, I don't know what it's like. I'll tell a woman, I don't know what it's like to be you. You don't know what it's like to be me. I don't know what it's like to be you as a black woman. You don't know what it's like to be me as a black man, but we know what it's like to be black.
That's profound right there.
And we talked about that last week with, blackness first. But we have to really, really, really endorse that, man. That's a statement that, we have to unify around. Other people, they'll throw us in a monolithic box. Say, because you black, y'all all are the same.
But that's what Roland was doing. Roland was he was trying to monolithicize, I don't know the word, but like that's what he was trying to do to Q. Like, all black initiatives got to go through BLM? Like,
but at the same time, we are all black first. And saying, hey, put our differences aside and say, hey, we're black. Let's start there first. Whatever your political affiliation is, it is what it is. We're black first. Now let's start there. Because there are socioeconomic differences. There are religious differences. There are all these differences. We got everything to divide us. You know, you go to college and you join a fraternity or you join a sorority. I mean, we got all these differences. You live in a certain neighborhood and you don't like this side of town, or you live on this street and you don't like that street. So we got all these different dividers. But the main thing is, okay, put all that to the side and say, what do we have in common? We're Black. From all these different aspects, can we start there? And once we start there, we say, okay, what do we need? Before we start going out looking to get it from someone else, what are the resources that we have internally first? Because we have resources. And that was one of the big things when, you know, when you talk to certain Black people of a certain age group, they'll talk about integration and segregation and the pros and cons. Some people were like, hey, we fought for integration. And some people were like, man, that destroyed a lot of Black businesses, a lot of Black neighborhoods.
Even if you go back to like something like the kneeling, right? The reason that the kneeling was successful is that everyone didn't kneel. You didn't know what was going to happen. Hey, they may kneel, they may not kneel, they may do this. There was a level of individual thought that was put into that, you know, when it initially happened, you know, speaking on like the Kaepernick years. So I think like we're at our most powerful, like, and granted, I'm not against person voting Democrat, person loving Biden, a person whatever. I'm against a person shaming anyone who doesn't think exactly the way that they think. And that's when I think we become a very limited people. And that's where I feel like we're going right now. We've never been limited to, and if we were limited, or if we did have people that were in the forefront of stuff, they earned that role through action. You know, they didn't earn that role through articulating stuff and having speeches and all, and being, great writers. They earned that through standing out there with monitoring police. You know, and I think like one of the things that is a real problem too is if we're going to take these political positions and create these movements, then there needs to be a clear path of entry to other people who want to join the movement. See, with the Black Panthers, with Huey and them, when Huey, them guys was out and they saw that brother get arrested, they didn't know that brother. But on the strength that he was a brother, they went and bailed him out of jail. When there was a Black Panthers here, and Black Panthers in Oakland, then there were some other people calling themselves the Black Panthers. Bobby Huey went to them and said, "Tell us about your organization, and if your purpose is in alignment with our purpose, we'll just join your organization." But now it's a status behind it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, who are you? You could have just joined my movement. Who are you to write up your own, manifesto about Black people?
Yeah, because I mean, politics is quid pro quo. It's something for something. And you got to be bringing something to get something. It's a favor for a favor. However you want to call it, that's how it goes. And voting, to me, you know, it should be personal. And what I mean by that is not showing everybody how we move. Because sometimes once you show everybody how you move, that's how you get taken for granted. And the ramifications of where we are now in this year, 2020, in the elections and everything that's coming up, you know, you have this huge divided segment. But even amongst that, I'll say that Black people, we still have to, hey, what's going to happen is going to happen. When we talk about entertainers being in the White House, everybody loved Barack Obama. He's the first Black president. I can remember mostly entertainers coming to the White House. Yeah. During that time, he had all these rappers and people coming to the White House. So it wasn't like we had a Black man in office and he was bringing the Black intelligentsia or whatever y'all want to call it.
We still ain't heard a word from Myron Rowe.
The grassroots community and building with them. He was still doing the same thing, towing that same line. When we talk about, you know, the pandering of how, you know, one group, it's like this. You know, do you love Black people or do you just love the vote of Black people?
And I really think that it's a really. I'm not gonna say that there can't be some type of both. I don't think it's like a definitely it ain't.
Let me take away love. Do you care about Black people or do you just really care about the Black vote?
I mean, I think people have some care about the Black people. Like I don't believe like a Beto O'Rourke just doesn't care about black people. But when you come to town and it's Bun B, Slim, and you want to cater to me through rap, it does show what you think about me. You know what I'm saying? And just going through, because like you didn't come to town and have a town hall meeting at TSU and, you know, I don't know, maybe their African American studies school with a PhD professor discuss black issues. You didn't have that, you know what I'm saying? And they consistently don't have that. And even the liberal platforms, the CNNs of the world, when they're having these conversations, yeah, they'll give us a celebrity attorney, a Angela Rye or something like that, but they're not genuine when it comes to black people. I mean, at the end of the day, they look at us to, you know, shook, jive, and entertain.
Well,
you know,
I think with politics, I think inherently there's going to be some pandering involved or whatever. But we got to figure out how, like, what's the threshold for the pandering or whatever, because
where do we draw the line?
Where do we draw the line? Especially
I got a one pander per four scholars, policy.
And I got a term for people who over pander, and I call it pandersexual. So that's a whole new term I'm gonna put into the lexicon. I want people to take that around with it. So if you overdoing the pandering, you know what I mean. You know, I'm gonna have to put you in that box of pandersexual because at some point it becomes insulting. Like, don't insult my intelligence with the over, you know, pandering
because
of a situation of a
Donald Trump panders to white people.
Yeah.
He panders to that demographic. He panders to a specific demographic of white people, and they fall for it too. They fall for it. Yeah. Like the Proud Boys or whoever. That's pandering.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I mean, you know, the Republicans historically have been about big business.
Yeah.
Hey, big business, money, bottom line. You know, socioeconomically, if those guys don't fit reach a certain threshold money-wise, y'all expendable. And I'll pander to you to get your vote.
But I say this though too, and this is like one of my, just from reading up and studying, it's a philosophy that I've really just now subscribed to, is that like funding a politician is far more powerful than voting for a politician.
Yeah, because you can own them.
Yeah, and if we as a black base, like let's just say as a black base, we just had our own black super PAC. And the black super PAC was like, it was a black interest super PAC. We raise money and we decide which candidates are most in alignment with what it is we're looking for. If we had $50 million,
run a ticket.
If we had $50 million, then we could really, that contract with Black America, that contract starts looking real important when, you know, hey, it's a hostile state and hey, you're trying to win Texas, it's a tight race and we got $2 million and we can pretty much like this give it to you. Well, then you got to come make some promises. The voting, to me, voting without money is, I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's not really been proven. Like when I look at results have come from sacrifice. Results that at least to my knowledge, and I don't know if every black vote and every black initiative happened, but the ones that I do know of, every single initiative that we have got accomplished, it came from sacrifice, bloodshed, some type of funding behind a movement. It hadn't come from us going to a poll and just all voting for one particular party. I'm not saying I'm gonna go vote early tomorrow. You know, so like I'm not saying don't go vote, but I'm saying I think we're overplaying the importance of what a vote is and underplaying the importance of finance, the importance of, and I think overall
people need incentive. If sometimes what happens is in politics, it's like, hey, you voted for me, but the incentive is the people that are sponsoring me, that are putting dollars in my pockets. Because now, once I'm in there, when I look at the list and I gotta go down the list, and I'm gonna say, okay, well, I'm taking care of these people first. Yeah. And then once it gets to the bottom line, all they did was just vote. Okay, they get whatever is left over after I took care of the money people.
We have the right to be selfish, and that's one. I'll leave with this. It'd be my last thing I would say. As black people, we have the right to be selfish. We have the right to vote for someone who specifically for what they're going to do for us, and just one of us making it, or at least it's not so and so. That's not enough anymore. Like seriously, like one thing about it, like it or hate it, hey. Q put together a platform. Black Panthers, they had 10 points. Elijah Martin, they had a goal. Martin, I can name a specific. So we're not wrong for wanting for being selfish, for saying what's in it for me. Hey, something for minorities, that's not what's in it for me. Yeah. Something for LGBT, that's not what's in it for me. Black people have the right to make decisions with their money, with their voting selfishly, because everyone else do it. LGBT, they're not voting for you because you're doing something for black people. They're not voting for you because you're doing something for immigrants. They're voting for you because you're doing something for them. So, that's the end of my TED Talk.
Hey, end of your TED Talk. Yeah. Hey, it's history, man. We started this with 1776. Took it all the way to 1877, and it's one thing. And it's good to see people saying go vote and encourage people to go vote. That's a good thing. But keep that same energy. Yes, black people died for the right to vote. Yes, we went through a Reconstruction era, and then we got hustled back into Jim Crow, and then we don't even have time to get into all of the money factors in that, and needing us down south to work again, and that being part of that compromise. Who's gonna work the plantation again? Y'all freed these Negroes. We ain't making no money, man. This tobacco ain't gonna grow itself. This cotton ain't gonna pick itself.
We gotta eat.
So, looking at the history of it and bringing that into a modern context, yes, go vote. Black people died for that. Black people died for a lot of things. A lot of
died to read. We died to go to school too.
Yeah, dying for the right to vote was one critical issue, but there have been a lot of other critical issues that black people have died for. So it's one thing to say, yes, go out and vote, but do the history and understand the history of voting. Because one day you may have a son and say, well, why am I voting? Or why is this, or why is that, and wanting to question things. And you're telling them to do it, and you don't even have an explanation and understanding why we got to the point of why we do it. Say, this is Gentleman's History Hour. We love y'all. We care about y'all. We want y'all to do the knowledge. Hey, take what we say. You either love it or you hate it, or you want to debate it. Open up the books, do the knowledge.
Shout out to Joe and Kamala, man.
Hey, subscribe on the YouTube channel too. Peace.
Too democratic. Republic cuff it. We chicken nuggets.
We dip in the sauce like mopping buckets. If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.